Hello, this is Ciaron Reilly, originally from Brisbane, Australia, and more recently resident outside His Majesty's Prison in Belmarsh, where my good friend who was born in Townsville, Queensland, Australia, I was born in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, Julian Assange, has been being tortured by the Brits for 4 years there now. And I was there on the first day Julian got lifted, which was December 7th, 2010. And also Ken Loach was there, and also John Pilger, who's sadly just passed away. And so many good people have passed away over the last 13 years. Jenny Bove, who I worked with, setting up the Wise Up for Manning and Assange. Michael Ratner, a great lawyer from New York. All these people were engaged with trying to get Julian released. And Gavin McFadden, who mentored Julian, and a lot of other people whose names do not immediately spring to mind. So I first met John Pilger in 1996, and he gave evidence at a trial of 4 women who broke into British Aerospace Wharton and were charged with £1.5 million pounds criminal damage. And Gareth Pearce, who's now the lawyer for Julian Assange, was the lawyer in that case. And Vera Baird, who was later to become a minister in the Brown government, was the barrister. And John gave evidence along with Jose Ramos Horta, who later became president, maybe still is, of Timor-Leste, and Carmel Badiajo, who'd spent 3 years in a Suharto dungeon in Indonesia following the coup of the early 60s. A coup that Robert McNamara said, once we secured Indonesia, we should have pulled out of Vietnam. Anyway, and Paul Rogers, an arms expert. So John, I somehow got his phone number, and it was very, he was very much in demand in the 90s, very much blacklisted at the end of his life. I found it difficult to get anything published. And he was very constant in his support for Julian. I'd often see him as I lived outside the Ecuadorian Embassy in Hands Crescent, Knightsbridge, London. And he's someone who really stuck with Julian. And I have this memory, actually, when I rocked up, I heard Julian had been taken into custody at Kentish Town Police Station, was being moved to Horse Ferry Courts. And I was actually outside the US Embassy because 4 of our ploughshares people were being sent down the United States that day. And I rushed to the Horse Ferry Courts. I'd say there were about 100 people there. Then I quickly realised that 95 of them were media. And I had never seen as much media outside, being in the vicinity of the US president. And I thought, where should I be? I should be up on that windowsill lecturing a captive audience about their responsibilities as journalists. So as I did that for quite a while, much to the disdain of mainstream journalists, Ken Loach came out, and Ken's not a big guy, and he looked quite fearful about entering this mad surf of the paparazzi, and he took a few steps and he disappeared. It was like he went under the waves, Then John walked out, and obviously John is quite taller and also experienced at trying to get to a bar, an Australian pub. And he just perused the crowd, walked through it, and the oceans parted. And I still couldn't see Ken surfacing anywhere. And so John was one of those Australians who came over in the 1960s, like Jermaine Greer and Clive James, and the guy who ended up being the art critic at New York Times. And he kind of made a living as Aussies critiquing British society. Great thing. And so he was easily accessible. Like it wasn't like academic writing. You could read him and understand him quite easily. And he took on issues that were very, very significant. Like he was in the room when Bobby Kennedy was shot in the head, right? So he was around for a long time. He engaged Vietnam. He put, along with Max Stahl, whose funeral I attended in Brisbane, Max took the footage of the Dili massacre, hid, as they killed about 160 people in the cemetery, he hid the footage under a tombstone and got beaten up by the Indonesian military. That didn't put him off. He went back and got the footage, and Saskia, I think, I hope I got the name right, smuggled it out. And that put East Timor back on the map, and we're right next door to East Timor. And there was a little movement when it first got invaded, but Shirley Shackleton, who's also passed away and was very supportive of Julian, she just kept that flame alive. And then I was in jail in Texas, and someone was sending me kind of excerpts in the New York Times, and there was East Timor, because of the Dili massacre. And then John Pilger made a film based on Max's footage called Death of a Nation, and that's really what put Timor-Leste back on the map. That's what led to these 4 women breaking into British aerospace who are profiting from the incineration of East Timorese. They got acquitted. They were on trial in Liverpool, and the people thought the crime is not with these 4 women, it's with British aerospace. And British aerospace today are providing the equipment to incinerate children in Gaza. So the roots of all this violence are back here. And John pointed that out constantly. He also took on advocating for Indigenous Australia, and we'll be remembering him at a pub called the Old Gun Pit in Woolwich, near the tube station, on Invasion Day, which is Friday, January the 26th, when Australia was originally invaded, at a gig called Cut My Journo Loose, Bruce, free Julian Assange. And you're welcome to that. I'm going back to Buckingham Palace to beseech the King, Charles III, to exercise his royal prerogative to release Julian Assange. And then I'm walking next Saturday, January 13th, my dad's birthday, back to His Majesty's Prison Belmarsh, where I'll be striking camp again after the cops flattened my camp over the Christmas. Very cynical and tactical. So John Pilger, presente.